I just got back from San Antonio, where I competed in my first tactical games. Man, it was a blast. But I wanted to run through all the gear that I brought with me before I put it in the washer, before I start putting stuff back into the gun safe and stuff like that. Little bit about my background. I have no tactical shooting experience whatsoever. I started doing this stuff about 4 or 5 months ago in training for this event. That meant I did not have a AR platform rifle. I did not have a competition shooting pistol. This is new to me. My background is fitness, so I have that part kind of in my back pocket, and I was able to just continue training how I normally train. And that was great because I had to focus more on the shooting part of it. I do outdoor stuff. I go hunting regularly, so firearms are not new to me. I shoot hunting rifles every year, but anything that involves tactical shooting is new to me. So changing targets, using different sights on one rifle, all of that stuff is new. And I want to share with you what my experience was with my gear in case you're in that exact same scenario, but you do want to get involved in the tactical games. So check it out. The first thing that I think it's worth mentioning, I flew to San Antonio, so I needed a case. I got the Magpul DACA 44 case. I believe it's the 44. What I like about this one over other ones is a couple different things. But first, they promoted that this thing could stand on any side without tipping over. It does have wheels, and it does do that. And I've got another case for my hunting rifles that you stand it up and it just tips over and slides across the room. It kind of sucks, but this one's been great. It has the ability to lock for TSA purposes in 2 different spots and very securely. The thing that's really cool about this thing is the modularity of how you can fit all of your handguns, rifles, and accessories in here. And they do that with this block system so that you can take these guys out and put them in wherever you'd like in order to keep your gear from shifting in the case itself. As far as, you know, a choice for a case, to me, this is a no-brainer, 10 out of 10. I really think this is the best case that I own. I went with the Smith & Wesson M&P 15, and I made a couple modifications to it, but this is a 16-inch barrel rifle. From what I learned by talking to some individuals about what to use for the tactical games, the 16-inch makes the most sense for longer distance shooting. So that's what I went with, and I am a lefty, so I had to make a number of changes to this right-handed gun. The reason I went with right-handed is because a friend said it's easier to get a replacement right-handed gun and know how to use it than it is to try to find a left-handed gun on site. So that's why I went with this guy. This Smith & Wesson is slightly modified. I put a Gemtech upper on it because the handrail and barrel are just slightly nicer, but also the handrail has a million different options for M-lock attachments, which I ended up using quite a bit of. This is helpful, but you can buy a fairly inexpensive rifle that already comes with a handrail that has a similar ability to put on accessories. So what I changed, again, because I'm left-handed, is a bunch of the controls and also the stock. So let me talk about those real fast. The first thing that I changed was the stock, which is the back of the rifle. And the one that came on the rifle is actually a really nice one. But what I liked about this one, this is a Magpul DT carbine stock, and its button to extend the stock itself is protected and can't really be depressed because of this bit right here. Secondly, it's got a nice quick disconnect for the strap. Very easy to operate in and out very easily, and also very secure, which I definitely used the strap. On the front of the rifle, I chose to put on a Magpul quick disconnect for the strap up here on the front of the rifle, even though the rifle itself has one built into the handguard. And the reason I went out here is because you can use the strap to help stabilize while shooting. Let's go back to the controls. With the controls, again, I'm left-handed, so this rifle did not have any controls on the left side of the gun. So to get a safety on the left side, I had to replace the safety to an ambidextrous safety, which is all these products I bought from Magpul because it was easy to find them, it was easy to use them. and I put that guy on. It's got an oversized, it is called the ESK selector, and I can now turn the safety on or off from either side. I also swapped out this thing right here, which is called the bad lever. And what that does is it locks the bolt back from either side, and I can then control it from right or left, which turned out to be incredibly beneficial. I also switched out the grip, and this is the MOE Plus grip made by Magpul. Very nice grip. I think the reason I chose this one is because you can put a little bit of storage in here, and not that you're really gonna, take tools out of the bottom of your grip in the middle of a competition, but if you needed to, you could have all the tools you need in the base of the grip. So that's a pretty cool little option. I also changed the charging handle itself to an ambidextrous charging handle that's oversized, which you can see kind of the wings of this thing are pretty giant. I'm an idiot. I'm new to this stuff. So reaching down and grabbing it, I would have to, this was a right-handed charging handle before, so I'd have to reach over to my left side. It's way easier to do this with either side. And because it's so big, I didn't even need to think about it. I could just reach up and grab it very easily. Kind of the last couple things is I put some texture on the side, which is a product made by Magpul. And I also put a hand positioning, I think they call it a barricade stop. When you go to actually shoot, number one, if you're using a barricade, you can put this edge right here up against it and shoot more stable. Secondly, when you grab the rifle itself, you're always putting your hand in the same position when you use that. So super helpful. Again, another recommendation that my partner gave me. I set this up for a left-handed rifle. The cool part about this is if Cherie, my wife, wanted to shoot, this is still able to shoot with all functions as a right-handed rifle, which is really cool. Lastly is the optics. And I went with the NightForce NX-8 1:8 by 24, and this is called an LPVO, an LPVO scope, low-powered variable optic. Basically, when you look through this thing, it's almost, if you have it set to 1, it's not going to magnify hardly at all. So 100 yards will look like 100 yards. And it'll go all the way up to 8, which will give you some magnification so that when you're shooting out to 200, 300, 400 yards, you can be much more accurate. This scope, I've used scopes before with hunting, and this scope is premium, top of the line. So glad to have it. It even has a red dot in the center. This thing was top of the line, and I would recommend that buy nice or buy twice. This thing is top of the line, highest recommendation. It's not cheap, but you know what? I can move this to any rifle that I upgrade to and be super happy with it. Secondly, I chose to go with a 45 degree on the left side. That's a aim point acro. And this is, people refer to these as a mailbox red dot. And the reason that it's a mailbox shape and doesn't have that cutout is because it's an enclosed emitter. So if it's raining or if it's muddy out, you don't need to worry about the red dot being illuminated on the screen itself. This will always have a red dot in it. It may get dirty on the lenses, but the red dot will always be there. And what you would use that for is if you're shooting at, let's just say, 100 yards or 200 yards, and you have the magnification up, as you're looking through your scope, it's difficult to find the next target in these competitions. So when you put your 45 and I see the red dot, this does not magnify. I'll be able to find that next target very easily just by rotating the gun just a little bit, finding the red dot, aiming it on it, and then turning my rifle back onto the target. So this was, believe it or not, super helpful to have in the last event that we did. So I used this thing more than once, but specifically for one of the events, we had 7 targets, all at about 100 yards, and it was very nice to have confirmed that I was aiming at the right target. The last thing I added was the Magpul MS1 strap. This is the simplest strap they make, and it's pretty cheap. But the reason I liked it is because, yeah, it doesn't have any padding or anything like that, but the sizing slides super easy and it's lean. And I like that just because it's light, it's easy to use, it's not gonna get hung up on anything. And I used it quite a bit. We actually had to do an event where we had our rifles on our backs, And this was super helpful to have because I could just tighten it up once it was on my back and it didn't move at all. And that's the rifle. Moving on to the pistol. I used a Smith & Wesson M&P 9 2.0 competitor. This guy worked out great. I had no issues with it. The only modification I made to this was I switched the mag drop to the right side because I'm a left-handed shooter and I could easily hit it with my thumb. Couple things I love about this thing. It's light, but it has enough weight to it to keep the muzzle down as you're firing rapidly. So you don't kind of need to worry about it kind of elevating as you're shooting. All of the features on it are oversized. So you have an oversized mag well. You have an oversized mag drop. Some of the other buttons it seems like they're a little bit larger, but it's got texture built into it for racking, and it's got a bunch of fluting in it too to make it light enough. I put the Holosun 509T red dot sight on it, which, yeah, it has like a solar panel on it and all that stuff, but it's a shake awake or push a button to turn on, and it's an enclosed emitter. So if it's raining or muddy, you don't need to worry about your red dot sight disappearing mid-competition. And guess what? It was muddy and it was raining for several of the events. And it was nice knowing that I didn't need to worry about that red dot disappearing. No complaints with this guy. I live in Colorado and I can only get 10 round mags, and I couldn't find any. This gun is made for 17 round mags, but I couldn't find any 17 round mags before I went. So I had to use the 10s. Unfortunately, that meant that I was changing mags more than everybody else. Everybody else has high capacity mags. So I was having to swap these guys out, and being a newer shooter, I'm a bit slower at that. So slowed me down definitely, but it wasn't the end of the world. And in the future, I'll buy higher capacity magazines. One of the things I did not have was what they call a battle belt, which I was completely clueless on and really couldn't find a lot of good information about what makes up a good belt. I chose the Core Essentials 1.75 inch battle belt. And what a battle belt is, for those of you guys that don't know, is you basically put this underbelt that has the soft side of Velcro around your waist. And I used belt loops in the pants that I was wearing. And once you have that on, you basically secure it with the other side. And now this is your inner belt. And you're then going to secure your storage belt on the outside of it, which this thing has a bunch of the pointy side of the Velcro onto the outside. And that keeps it from shifting up and down. And this guy will lock and tighten around your waist as well. Super nice. As far as battle belts go, I highly recommend using this Core Essentials belt. I think I just hit the jackpot and lucked out and got a great one the first shot. And it has all these MOLLE straps so that you can load your equipment to it. But I bought the Core Essentials holster mount for my pistol, just because I knew it would work with this belt. And then I went with the Tier 1 Level 2 holster made for my Smith & Wesson for right here. I bought a second one for a separate pistol that I chose not to use, but I will probably use next time. And I'll just mount that to this holster mount. So that's kind of cool. It's a universal mount. I don't need to worry about that. I just changed the pistol holster on it. Now you have to have a level 2. So a level 2 means not only do you have compression on it, which keeps it from falling out of the holster, but a second way to secure the pistol inside the holster so that it doesn't fall out. And Tier 1 makes that product. They also make level 3s if you want to be extra safe. I chose to go with the level 2. I got a dump pouch, which I didn't use because I didn't really understand how to use it. But then once I watched people in the competition actually using their dump pouch, I kind of got it, and I wish I would have practiced with it a bit more. The dump pouch, so basically I would just open this guy up, and I've now got this pouch that looks like a chalk bag that I can put my mags as I finish with them inside of. So I was dropping my mags on the ground, and then I'd have to pick them up and put them into these mag pouches. When reality, I could have just dropped it into my hand, thrown it in the mag pouch, and then I could have moved on to the next part of the stage. So this is pretty beneficial. You don't have to have it. I think it's beneficial. I have a trauma kit on it, and I put this on here because I was like, you know what? If something were to happen at this event, I'm ready to help out. And this is kind of my thing, you know, just being a first responder. You don't know what's going to happen. And we've seen some pretty crazy stuff even at shooting ranges that surprised the hell out of me, and we've used first aid kits. So I kept this on. Unfortunately, it got hung up on just about everything that I was crawling underneath. So I'd probably leave it off for the next one. These are called mag pouches, and these 3 are the AR mags, and these 3 are my pistol mag pouches. And these were also bought from Core Essentials. They're light, they're easy to connect to my battle belt, and that's why I went with them. Are there better ones out there? Maybe, I don't know. But these ones are also stackable. So I could take these 3 and I could stack them through the MOLLE built into these 3, which I didn't do, but maybe I'll try on the next one. And I think that might be worthwhile. This is called a battle belt, and kind of looks like this. And I got my holster right here. So gotta have one. Doesn't need to be this one, but that's the one that I use. Last couple things here. I have the 511 plate carrier that I used. This is, I think, called the trainer plate carrier. It's not quite as built up as one of their other ones that I used to own, but the padding is super nice. It's also got that little sweat relief or heat relief pads in there where it's not just up against your skin all the time. This was pretty nice. The other thing that's nice about this, and the reason I use this one, bought this at Rogue Fitness, is that it's got MOLLE straps on the front and back. I figured if there was an event where I didn't want those mag pouches on my side, I could load them on the front and have access to those magazines in a different spot. But if you have one that is slick and does not have any of the MOLLE straps, you would not be able to do that. So that's why I bought that one from Rogue. The other reason is, when I was looking at it, it's got this cool cummerbund that has a zipper pouch, and I did keep a couple things in here. It's still in here actually. Just a optics wipe, and I had some alcohol wipes in there as well for in case that didn't do the trick. Interesting about this guy, I did not go with a hard plate. I went with or even a ceramic plate. I went with this is kind of funny because you call it the tactical games and you think you need a actual protection plate in it, but in reality I went with something much simpler, if I can get out of here quickly, called a jacked rabbit plate. And this is soft and filled with sand, but it meets the requirements, which is 15 pounds for men and 10 pounds for women. My vest in all weighed 16 pounds. They weigh you at the beginning, and your vest needs to weigh 15 pounds. So I met that requirement, and I use these guys. And the reason I like this is I like the idea of it, a hard plate not smashing into my chest as I was carrying a sandbag or breathing heavily. Shout out to the Jacked Rabbit. I reached out to them, and they got it to me within a week. And I actually met the guy at the event itself, and he's like, "Hey, how you liking those soft plates?" And I was just like, I didn't tell anyone that I have these soft plates in here. How the heck would he know? And he's like, "Oh, I made your plates." It's like, that's cool. So thank you, appreciate it, and support small business. Last few things here are the things that I wore. So hearing protection, I'm gonna start there. I wore just a standard pair of noise canceling hearing protection that allows you to hear voices, and you use a control knob. Unfortunately, in the travel, sometime it got turned on, and I didn't have any AA batteries or AAA batteries with me, so they didn't work at all. So I'm just shouting at everybody throughout the weekend. These are not recommended. I would go with the in-ear hearing protection, because every time I carried something on my back and came back over, they flipped over and I could hear gun blasts, so I'd have to correct it. So I would use in-ear hearing protection, but these are cheap. So I understand if you're gonna use something like that. That's why I did. I have a pair of shooting glasses that have both sun protection or clear lenses, and these are made by Magpul, and they fit my big head perfectly. You know, all of these never really look cool, so go for function, and that's what I did. These are called, little things in here, these are called the Defiant sunglasses, shooting glasses. So no complaints here. Really liked them. They're super comfortable underneath the hearing protection, which a lot of them aren't. And I lucked out by choosing these and would recommend them to anybody. So go with those guys. One thing that I know, and I never really love to promote any one company, but man, Sitka makes the best gear ever. Whether you're climbing, whether you're hunting, whether you're just hiking, their stuff is just the best. It's the most technical outerwear that's out there. And when outerwear, I mean, even their under layers and thermal layers are just the best. But anyway, these are called the Ascent pants. I use them for early season hunting. They're extra lightweight, but the cool part about them is they're 4-way stretch. So doing physical activity like fitness stuff in them was kind of a no-brainer. And the second thing that sold me wearing these guys, two things. Number one, they have belt loops that integrated with my battle belt perfectly, never had an issue. Secondly, you can put knee pads in them, and you're out there in the dirt and there are rocks, there are a lot of casings out there, and you're kneeling on the ground regularly during this event. I wanted to have some knee pads in, and I did not want to wear knee sleeves. So I have these inserts put in there that you can take out. I got the knee inserts from Sitka as well, and man, I 10 out of 10 recommendation, 11 out of 10 recommendation to have this pair of pants and these guys to go inside of them. I mean, I didn't notice my knees one time, and I was able to lay down quickly, kneel quickly, and not worry about it. So those are the Sitka Gear Ascent pants with knee pads. So I wore 2 pair of footwear for the event. The first ones I wore for all of the events but one was the GoRuck Mach V2, and I think these are the mid tops. And the reason I wore these is because they basically are like an athletic sole with lugs on the bottom of them. And I've worn these for a lot of rucking and other events and have had no issues with them whatsoever, causing blisters or anything. So I use these for rope climbs during the event, no issues. I use these for the run events where you're sprinting around shooting, no issues whatsoever. And they do provide a little ankle support, but in reality, what I was looking for was foot protection from the rocks and everything like that you're running around on, and these were great. Then for one event, I did wear my Ultra Lone Peak 7s, which are just simply a trail runner that have a wide toe box, which I really like. And we did a 5.2 mile ruck, which was really just a run with a rucksack on. And I think I probably managed to hold maybe like 5.5 miles an hour for those 5.2 miles. And these worked out perfect. They did end up super muddy by the end of it, but they didn't cake up with mud. They kind of shed the mud as I was going. So as far as wearing either of these, I think you could really get away with just wearing the Ultras for the events as well. But actually, I was pretty happy to have these for the shooting events because they were nice to have a little bit of ankle protection as you're kind of running around. So that's my gear. I did make some notes though about what I would do differently, and I did it immediately afterwards so I wouldn't forget. So I'm gonna read them off my notepad. I haven't reviewed these really, but the first thing it says is no extra gear on my belt, remove the trauma kit. So there's the one thing that I would do differently on my battle belt. Next, I would get an elastic leg loop for your holster. It was nice to have that extra point of attachment that runs from the holster mount to your leg and then has a connection, but mine was not, it was static, so there was no stretch to it. I would get one that has some stretch to it for the next one, because when I was doing some of the sandbag stuff and your leg muscles are expanding and contracting, it did get a little tight from time to time. So I wanted it tight for most of it, but then there was times where I could feel it kind of restricting my movement. So I would get an elastic leg strap. Large capacity magazines. Now, again, some states don't allow that, but you kind of got to deal with what you got to deal with, but you can get those things when you're out of state. So AR-15 magazines, 30 rounders, and then whatever number of rounds you think you need for your pistol. I would recommend, if you can do a 17 plus, that's what I would do, is 17 plus. There was guys out there with, I think, like 20 round or 21 round magazines, and they weren't having to change nearly as much as I was. Gloves for cold mornings. I didn't bring my gloves. I had been practicing shooting with gloves, but I didn't bring them for some reason. So our second morning, on Sunday morning, it was pretty darn cold in Texas, especially for Texas. I believe it was in the 40s. So holding on to cold barbells as well as shooting, it would have been nice to have some gloves. It would be really cool, and luckily my partner had one, so we were able to use it, but it would be really cool to have the Garmin, I believe they call it a Zero, but I don't know that for sure. It's their chronographer. And that thing is so tiny, it's like the size of a cell phone. It comes with a little stand, and you're able to zero your rifle on Friday before the event. And if you had that chronographer, you'd also be able to do the ballistics calculations with an app on your phone and get a new a set of ballistics information for different distances on your reticle. That would have been, we had it, so it was incredibly helpful, and I could be super confident in my holds, but it's not necessary. So it's kind of one of those things that I was happy to have it, but probably won't have it next time. As far as clothing goes, I wish I would have had like a mid-weight layer. So like I said, on day 2, it was pretty cold. I have plenty of Sitka gear that I could have put on a mid-weight layer or even a heavyweight layer and been just fine. But I ended up wearing a big cotton sweatshirt for one of the events because it was cold, and that was not ideal. So it kind of got stuffed in there with my my vest. So I would have switched over to a more lightweight, mid-weight layer. It did rain, so having some form of a rain jacket with a hood that you could put over your ear protection would have been ideal. So the one that I have at home is the Sitka Gear Dew Point, which is a real lightweight rain protection jacket. And I just didn't bring it. I would have worn it for sure. So we flew and rented a car, and having a mid-size SUV was nice because it's a lot of gear to throw inside of it. But what would have been awesome is that if you live in the area and you're driving in, is to have camp chairs, an easy up tent so that you can set up underneath it, and have a cooler with all your food. Because the ranch that we were at, there was no restaurant within 50 miles. So we were kind of dependent on whatever food was at the event. But if you're coming in from out of town, having that stuff or a camper would be amazing. Some people had campers there. Would make life so much easier because you could get out of the rain, you could hang out and use some chairs. We basically sat in our rental car because it was raining from time to time or it was cold, and that was kind of isolating. So to be a part of the community, it would have been a lot more fun to hang out with everybody else in an easy up with some chairs underneath it. So bring those in a cooler. To wrap this thing up, it's gear heavy and it's not cheap gear either. It adds up. So the gear itself is expensive, but if you already have this gear, you're way ahead of everybody else and you should just get involved in this sport quickly. But if I can help you out, do me a favor, like and subscribe this thing. It really helps us out. And it also let me know if you want to see more information about the tactical games or other events. But also, if you have something you would like a specific answer to, hit us up in the comments below. Or if you have a suggestion for other people that I left out, I would like to see it. So please let me know something in the comments below as well. That's a wrap up for gear for my first tactical games down at the YO Ranch in Mountain Home, Texas. It was pretty awesome. So, hey, that's all I got for you. Thanks a bunch.